Light, the space where stories heal and practices guide us home to peace. Today's guest is Penelope Holt, writer, advertising executive, and soulful explorer of the human condition. From her roots in England to her journey through Manhattan's fast lanes, Penelope's story weaves through trauma, creativity, resilience, and a quest for deeper meaning. Her work, both fiction and nonfiction, reminds us that peace isn't something we wait for, it's something we practice. This conversation is about finding out that stillness, even in life's storms. Welcome to the show, Penelope. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Mhm. So, your life has spanned continents and careers. How did your journey, especially through advocacy, lead you to explore spiritual practices for peace?
Well, I grew up in England. I was the first one to go to university, so that was sort of an isolating. I had to kind of leave my community and go off to college. Then I went off to London by myself, and then I came to New York by myself. So there were times that I felt very alone, very solitary, very unmoored. And, like life is difficult for everybody. We all have a we all have a story of adversity. But I think feelings of loneliness and pain and anxiety is what drives us to seek spiritually. We're looking for comfort. We're looking for reassurance. We're looking for inner strength. So that's really what got me on the path to spirituality. Loss. I've lost people in my life, disappointment. We all go through. Life is difficult for all of us. But like the Buddha says, there's pain in life, but suffering, we don't have to make it worse with mental suffering. So once I started looking for answers and finding different spiritual technologies and explanations, I started out in Christianity as a Catholic. I'd still describe myself as Christian, but I was very interested in Buddhism because it does a lot of work around training the mind and calming, using meditation to calm the mind, and then look into the contents of the mind and then begin to train the mind towards happiness and fulfillment. So the more I began looking into it and getting tools and seeing that those tools worked, the more I saw that it's a good idea to use them, that people who are on a spiritual path looking for peace and gratitude and fulfillment tend to find it.
Absolutely. So, was there a moment when you realized the external world couldn't give you the peace you sought?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all get those. It takes a long while to be convinced of that. We get those flashes. People, there's this novelty, this novelty that we long for something, and then we get that thing, and then we can become pretty bored for it. We don't continue to be grateful for it or appreciate it. So we're always looking outward. The next job promotion, a nicer car. Yeah, this is just the sickness of being taken over by materialism. And we all do it. We all sort of cling to that illusion that there's something out there materially, or some adventure or some experience out there that will lead to inner peace. So it really takes a long while of, treading life's path and going after the things that you think you want, and then getting them, and then finding out that they don't scratch that itch. They don't give you that inner peace. And so it's a good day when you finally become convinced that I'm going to have to turn inwards, and that really the state of my mind, the way I see the world, the way I frame my own existence, the way I, take up the challenge is what is going to give me is what is going to give me the satisfaction. And that's wonderful, because at that point you're not dependent on the outside world. You're not dependent on having money or having things. You become dependent on that inner guidance. You become dependent on your own ability to create the life that you want. Obviously, there are hardships, and some people have more hardships than others, and it's very easy to be beaten down. But Viktor Frankl's book about the man's search for meaning, which he wrote during the Holocaust in the death camps, he saw that even there, people make a decision about how they want to frame their situation and what attitude they want to take and how they're going to behave. So even in the worst circumstances, we can figure out how to think about it and relate to it in a way that is going to make us suffer less.
That realization that peace is an inside job is such a turning point for so many.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I'm not saying anything new. It's perennial wisdom. It's present in all of the great faith traditions and spirituality. But I don't think we teach. One thing that I'm sad about is that we stuff kids full of information, but we don't really teach them about psychology of achievement or how to work with their own minds. There's a wonderful book about Gandhi, his biography. It's called My Experiments with the Truth. And, he became a lawyer. He lived in South Africa and then he went to England. And then he went to India to campaign for home rule. And afterwards, he set up a school that was focused mostly on spiritual matters and meditation, because he thought it was more important for the children to learn how to master their own mind and spirit and, become familiar with that and train in that way. And so I think sometimes people, they get a good education and they get stuffed with a lot of information, but that doesn't necessarily give them the spiritual tools that they need to kind of find strengthen the spirit and walk a path of happiness and peacefulness. Just being present, being able to be present in the moment and to enjoy it. We're all of us do it, no matter how well intentioned we are. We run around, we like the distractions. Social media is really, it's the distractions of social media is like nothing we've ever seen before. We all get pulled away, and we forget that it's if we can just train ourselves to sit quietly and be present, that that's where we're going to find peace of mind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, you blend creativity with resilience in your writing. How does creative expression become a spiritual practice in itself?
But I think it's a place where you can explore some people journal. In fact, it's quite common that when people are working on themselves emotionally and spiritually, they start to journal. They're allowing their unconscious, their inner life to sort of spill out onto the page. So I've had two great loves in my life, which is writing. Ever since I was a small child, I wanted to write. I began as a reader and just voraciously read books and loved storytelling and then decided that's what I wanted to do, no matter how badly. I just wanted to take a shot at it. And then the second has been forced initially with pain onto a spiritual path, but then really enjoying it, really that seeking. And so combining both of them, writing books about the things that I uncover, and when I do it in fiction, I'm able to create these characters. My latest book, The Angel Scroll, is about a missing Dead Sea Scroll that predicts three miraculous paintings that will be like a visual gospel. And so there's a young widow who after her husband dies, she paints one of these amazing paintings. She's trying to get over her grief. Her world has fallen apart. She longs to see her husband again. So she goes on this spiritual journey. She goes looking for these other paintings, but she's also looking for a way to create a new life for herself and to get over the grief. So it's interesting to be able to create characters so that you can explore your own ideas through them.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So, do you find that writing helps process emotions that otherwise stay stuck?
Yes, I mean I've done journal writing, but it's a little too direct for me. I really have, through writing fiction and writing characters and telling stories, it's really allowed me to explore what I think, you put yourself in a situation, a young widow who's tragically lost her husband. How does she feel? She gets up in the morning, she's depressed. She doesn't want to go on anymore. Her life is demolished. Where does she get the resiliency to go on? How do you create a life for yourself when everything is, if it's death or bankruptcy or ill health or whatever catastrophe comes along and kind of knocks you off your feet? What is it that allows you to get back up and to start thinking about life in a new way and to believe that you can go on and to be optimistic and to be grateful again when all you feel is sadness and upset? So I know I was talking to someone, her husband had just died a couple of months before, and she was reading my book, and she said, you wrote grief so well, I had to put it down. She said, I had to keep stopping and putting it down because, it was touching what she was actually going through. So yeah, that's a great, if you put yourself into that character's mind in that situation, especially if it's something you've experienced yourself or something similar, then it allows you to explore those feelings and then the spiritual lessons, because I think whatever happens to us in life, if we can figure out what the lesson is, you figure out, what am I supposed to learn from this or understand from this? I'm angry because I've lost this person who means everything to me. How am I supposed to go on and be grateful? So you have a choice. You can either sink into bitterness and grievance, or you can start digging deep and say, what am I supposed to learn? I mean, there's a famous story of the Buddha, of the woman who lost her child and she's grief stricken, she can't go on, and he asks her to go and take a knock on every door and I think take a mustard seed or ask for a grain, but only she can only take it from houses where there's been no death, there's been no loss. And of course, it's an exercise. Every door she knocks on, death has visited that house, because we all lose the people that we care about eventually. So it's a universal experience. And so once we understand that everybody goes through this, it's part of being human, then we know that others find a way to go on, that we can find a way to go on. So, and we forget that sometimes. We become sort of so isolated. We think that things are happening just to us and only to us, that we're the first to go through this, or it's worse for us. So it's always a good idea to connect with what's universal, and then in those universal experiences, it sort of strengthen our spirit if we go about thinking about it in the right way.
That connection between creativity and healing, it's such a beautiful reminder that art is medicine.
Yeah, in fact, in this book, the theme of the book is that 3 miraculous paintings, sort of supernatural paintings, will be created by 3 unknown artists. They're unknown, and a couple of them one of them has never painted before, but they create these masterpieces. They're almost like old masters, like a Rembrandt, and they're very spiritual and healing in nature. And the point I was trying to make is that sometimes when we look at a beautiful piece of art, or we're out in nature and we see something that is just effortlessly beautiful, it opens your soul. It's soul opening, and it gets through in a way that words can't sometimes, explanations and words and abstractions. But when we look at real art, we're touched by it, we're moved by it. The great artists like Michelangelo, the Renaissance painters, they believed in the muses. They believed in divine inspiration. They actually thought that the gods sent muses down to work alongside them and give them their creativity. So they actually had this notion of the muse being a spiritual being that brought a sort of divine energy with them and helped them, accompanied them as they were on their, artistic journey, which is, it kind of shows in the work, because when you look at those great Renaissance painters, you see that superhuman beauty, and they are inspirational. That's why they were, a lot of their commissions were to paint in the churches back before the printing press in Christianity, before they could print the Bible and people could read the Bible. They couldn't even read. They would go to churches, and that's where they would see the stories of Jesus and his church. They would look at the beautiful paintings and be inspired and very touched by that, and it kind of reinforced their faith. So inspiration and spirituality and art have always been closely connected.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, what are some specific spiritual practices that have helped you cultivate peace, especially during challenging times?
I've returned more to Christianity, but I've kind of found similar things in all, in the different faith traditions that I've looked at. Mantras or prayers, when you say the rosary or you say Buddhist mantras, it's this idea of, especially in Buddhism, the idea that sound is healing and that sound itself is a creative force. And if you repeat words with the proper intention, with spiritual power in them, it actually um, clears your it clears your mind and your unconscious, because we're all beset by poisons, of the anger and ignorance and greed, and we get taken away by negativity and destructive thoughts. And so I think I used to, like with the rosary, just constantly praying, Hail Mary. I used to think, well, what's the point of that? But there's something to be said about the mantra, about repeating holy words or holy sounds over and over and over, that I think is spiritually cleansing. And prayer, just praying to understanding that there's a power greater than yourself. And some people don't believe that, but I don't know how you can't come to the conclusion that there isn't some great creative force in the universe that is designing and shaping things. That's my personal opinion. So I think we get mired down in our own petty lives and our own limited thinking. We're just sort of brainy apes at this point. So I think always remembering that there's something more powerful, more divine, great creative force, and appealing to that. It gives you the faith that the solutions that you can't see in front of you, but they're there. So prayer, a lot of prayer, and then meditation. I really like Buddhist meditation, shamatha, which is calming the mind, because the monkey mind, we don't even know how much our mind is racing and taking us out of the present moment. So calming the overactive mind with meditation, and then vipassana, which is insight meditation, and watching your thoughts. And by watching your thoughts and your feeling states, you can see what is destructive inside of you. You can see what's guiding you in the wrong direction. And so I think meditation, insight meditation, is really, really useful to kind of create that space and see what's arising for you. And then instead of of allowing it to take hold of you and carry you away like a fast flowing river, you can actually create that space and let that thought go, let it arise and let it go. And sort of the more you contemplate wholesome things and skillful things, obviously you're creating an internal climate. So your emotions and your thoughts, your mental states are going to be better and more life affirming and more productive, because you've conditioned them to be that way. So, it's like food. If we eat bad food, we get sick. And if we think bad thoughts, we get sick. So I think meditation is really good at making sure that we contemplate wholesome and not unwholesome things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, is there one ritual or habit that's been your anchor through it all?
Um, yeah, I think people don't. It's very easy to not know how we work. I think it's very easy to not stop and look at the contents of our own mind. And so what I just described, I would say prayer and being mindful is as being most helpful to me. Becoming really conscious and aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And if it's negative, allowing it to not take over me, but to let it fade away, and or to replace it with to think about more wholesome things. And then more recently, and these awarenesses come and go, but it's a good day when they finally start to take hold. Just being present, because your mind is cognizing your environment. You're looking out and you're seeing flowers. Your mind is taking that light and cognizing, those objects, and then those objects stimulate, thoughts and feelings. So, and that is happening every moment that we are creating, we're cognizing, we're recognizing the world, and it's creating our inner experience. And that's we just take that for granted, but it's an absolutely amazing insight to know that by looking at the world and cognizing it, you're actually creating it inside of yourself, and then you're having a reaction to it. So with the proper attitude, you can sort of, every moment could be happy and peaceful, because you're literally responsible for shaping what it is that you see. You think it's out there and it's just happening to you, but you're actually, based on your frame of mind and your consciousness, you're actually creating that inner experience. So I'm really meditating on that lately and trying to hold on to it and remember it, because it just changes your entire experience. It changes the entire day when you understand it in those terms.
I love how approachable that feels. Peace doesn't have to be grand, just consistent. So, for someone feeling overwhelmed by disconnected from peace, what's one simple practice they can start today?
In Buddhism, there's a practice called Dzogchen, and it's basically just noticing. In Western therapy, they use it. I think it's cognitive behavioral therapy, but sometimes we're very anxious. We don't even know that we're anxious, and I think to just stop and begin to witness your own inner, life, and to begin to notice, when you look directly at something, it it tends to fade away. So if you're not aware that you're anxious or you're afraid or you're apprehensive or you're in the grip of some negative emotion, and you're going along and you're being pushed by it, and then but you actually stop and you look at it, and you see, oh, that I'm I know that I'm afraid. I notice that I'm afraid. I notice that I'm anxious. I notice that I'm worried or apprehensive. I'm sad. There's just something about having direct contact with those feeling states that help to dissipate them. And they move through you. In Buddhism, they talk about adventitious states. They're conditioned. And if we don't feed them, if we don't give them life, they will arise and then they will fall away. And so it's sort of like just moving the traffic along. And something that helps me is if I just look at those feelings and watch them disappear, eventually they will pass through me. But if I am unconscious of them and I keep just sort of being driven by them, ignoring them, but at the same time being affected and driven by them, they'll just pick up more steam. So that is when I'm very upset and I'm going through distressing things, I try and look directly at the feelings, and that just helps them. It helps to move them along, and then eventually you get that relief, and you suddenly notice, I'm not as anxious. I feel neutral. I don't feel great, but I don't feel bad. And then hopefully, if you've been contemplating the right things, you'll become aware that all of a sudden you feel relaxed, you feel happy, you feel optimistic. And so I don't think people realize to what extent we create our own weather system. We're actually shaping our experience by how mindful we are of what it is that we're feeling. If we become very mindful and we look at those feelings, we have the ability to change them. And you have the power to, we have the power to do that. We keep thinking that something's going to happen on the outside, but it's an inside job.
That invitation to begin where you are is the essence of this journey. Penelope Holt reminds us that peace isn't a destination, it's a practice, woven into our daily moments, our creativity, and our courage to heal, whether through words, stillness, or gentle rituals. The path to peace is always within reach. So take a breath, trust the process, and let peace find you right where you are.